Good evening, everyone. Welcome back then to another LFM stream here for round number 5 of the Case King Pro Series. Apologies for the delay and some of the other technical shenanigans. I think, at least in some form or another, we are up and running now, and we'll be able to kick off with the action very, very shortly. So we are at Donington Park, a very tricky and technical circuit, and we have come away from an incredible race for round number 4 where we were at the Hungaroring. Traditionally a circuit very difficult to overtake at, but that did not stop us from having some fantastic action going all the way to the wire, where Luke Whitehead was able to make himself the first repeat winner of Season 12 and continue his championship charges. All very tight at the top of the standings. I have a feeling it might be very tight in this race once more as well. And Donington Park, a fantastic circuit, and it is such an authentic, legendary, historic circuit in the world of motorsport. So let's have a little bit of a close look at what we're going to be dealing with for tonight. 12 turns of motorsport goodness on this very old airfield. In ACC, we do actually get the luxury of seeing some of the jets flying over this place as well. 4 kilometers of undulating high action stuff. We head through Red Gate at turn 1, down the hill of turn 2 and through those formidable crane of curves. High commitment and high confidence needed in your cars through this segment of the circuit, and then beginning the climb up through Sarsky's Bridge into McLean's, and then starting to come back down the hill through Coppice Corner. A tricky one to get right, and it's certainly going to be a bit of a challenge for our drivers. Closing in on those deadly S's, we will have our stewards paying a bit of extra attention to track limits through there this evening, and then Melbourne Hairpin. Interestingly, quite a lot of overtaking opportunities through there, using the exit out of that 9-10 sequence, and then closing out a lap on the exit of Goddard's. But that's enough of a little bit of a rundown of this circuit. Let's, in actual fact, let's get straight into the action of what we have kicking off and going on. Drivers getting their final minutes of practice dialed in at the moment, and then we'll be heading into qualifying, followed up by our 60-minute race very, very shortly. Big thank you once more for all the incredible support that we have had on the channel. Last week, we crossed that lovely little threshold of 850 followers. We've even closed in a little bit closer towards 900. Maybe that's a bit too much of an ambitious target for tonight, but you guys blew me away last week with the incredible, wonderful support that you were bringing to the streams. Who knows? Anything is possible. Looking at our grid for this evening, I think it's going to be a pretty good one, I must say. We, of course, always have some of the greatest talent that ACC has to offer in the field, but we have some mighty, mighty names back with us. One of them very much being this man. He's phased out of existence, unfortunately. There he is. The cameraman's taking a little bit of time to pick up Tinko van der Velde. Of course, the Season 11 champion, and a man that kicked things off in fine, fine style in the opening round. He missed last week's race, where if you're looking at the current standings in the Pro Series, you may think he's a little bit out of contention. But recall that we have 2 drop rounds that the drivers can be making use of over the course of this season. So this man is very much still in contention. He is back on the grid this evening, and we'll be looking, try to see if he can add another victory to that ever-growing tally as we kick things off and get underway for our qualifying session as drivers try to get on circuit as quickly as they can and try to get in those perfect laps. Donington Park, it's a tricky one to hook up in qualifying, it must be said, because overall, you know, it all comes down to, there's a couple of really key areas where you can gain a lot, but you can also lose everything. And certainly this is one area on the exit of the old hairpin and flying through that right-hander. And if you just go a little bit too wide, very easy to get a track extension there. And also, got to be careful of slow punctures as well. Puts a lot of force and load through those tyres, and they can start to react pretty sadly in the grand scheme of things if you do that too often in the race. And the next poignant part of this lap is just coming up now, heading into these mighty, mighty S's as you fly away through turns 9 and 10. It's quite a compact chicane, and what that means is a driver just tyre fail gets sent into oblivion by Caracas, and that quite often happens around the circuit, it must be said. But You know, a lot of speed through there can be carried because of how tight and close those two apexes are together. But with those bits of AstroTurf on the inside, it's very easy to go in quite eagerly into that sequence, and it can bite you back in the way of track limits. We'll see, though, what a man who is very, very good in the world of LFM and ATC, a previous champion in his own right, Grant Carreras, heading down towards turn 1 now for the first lap of qualifying. He uses all of the track that he's got available to him, even dipping a little bit into pit exit there to try to open up the line as he now heads down the hill for the first time into these corner curves. McLaren, a lot of downforce on board this car, so he'll be perfectly flat through there over to the left-hand side, ready for old hairpin, clipping that apex on the left-hand side, taking a little bit of liberty with the track limits on the exit of turn 4. And now continuing the climb up the hill, flick it into the right-hander of McLean's, struggling a little bit with the front end of the car mid-corner there, but manages to get it together pretty nicely. And now into Coppice. You heard that early upshift very, very quickly to try to limit that TC interaction on the exit, and now carrying all that momentum in towards the chicane. We saw him take out the tyre bale a moment ago. How's he fare through here? Really dives into the apex, carries a bit too much speed though, and loses a lot of time on the exit. Will be valid, I believe, although actually maybe flagging up as a cut in the lap, so not the opening bid for Grant Carreras they would have wanted, but the Lithuanian driver will have plenty more opportunities to get times on the board. And seeing what he can put together. We'll see as the laps start to come on in what Grant Carreras is able to do. And the first lap, and actually first registered lap as a result of validation from Carreras, is 25.862 from Jacob Osterman, a man that has been at the pointy end of the grid every single race so far this season, and he is also very much looking to contend at the championship taking as well. To see a little bit of a remark on online from him on Twitter after last week's showdown with Luke Whitehead. He's possibly aiming to be the first champion to not take a race win. Will that change tonight? Of course, I may say that rather jokingly. It would be an interesting accolade, there's certainly no doubt about it, but these drivers all trying to go for the ultimate glory, and they want as many victories to their tally as possible, and this ITB racing car has been very consistent in being in close contention time after time so far in the opening few rounds. George Boothby, though, is looking to try to put a stop to that and get his first win on the board for Season 12, a man that once again was in championship contention, and really the only contender, apart from Marco Bischoff, who had a little bit of a resurgence at the tail end of last season, who was able to take the fight to Tinko van der Velde, who at times seemed unstoppable. George Boothby, of course, one of the winningest drivers on the LFM platform, but hasn't ever quite managed to put together a season where he's been able to challenge for that almighty top prize. And whilst he is certainly, again, he is up there and amidst the top contenders for Season 12, he's got a little bit of work to do, and he is trying to see if he can maybe open that up with a race victory for round number 5 on home soil. Right now, he is improving on his delta and has invalidated his lap. Lewis Roters, another man that's gone a bit under the radar, put on a strong showing in the last couple of races, and he is very much up there in contention as well. And right now, currently getting his McLaren towards the front row, where it is McLaren's 1, 2, and 3. Remember, we do have the BOP in play for this championship, the new custom BOP that LFM has brought into play for Season 12. So it does even out things just a little bit, but of course there will always be track car combinations where there are just those slightly ideal kind of platforms, and this McLaren looking very fast around this circuit at the moment. You know, it's got pretty low drag when it is running in certain configurations, and it's a very stable platform with a lot of downforce, but it's got to be contending with the Aston Martin of Amadeo Castorino, who took victory at Bathurst after it all went wrong between Jacob Osterman and in the support in the chat once again for Mr. Carpet. Timo Carpet, of course, doing the Bentley representation as coming to the line. Lewis Roters improving, but only good enough for P3. And let's see if we can hop across to the wonderful, wonderful Bentley, if can track him down. There he is, currently sitting in P22. And he's got a little bit of work to do if he wants to get that Bentley up into contention for a race win. Once again, of course, was looking mighty, especially at Kyle Army. He was there or thereabouts contending for those podium positions, but Bathurst, he put it on pole. The crowd went wild, but unfortunately, disaster at Hell's Corner in the second phase of the race left Osterman with a penalty, Karppinen in the gravel, and Castorino with a free pass into that P1 position. So we'll see how it goes for the Finnish driver tonight. And it's all two of his fans in the chat cheering on the mighty Bentley. He jumps up to P20, but he'll be hoping for a bit more than that as Jadier gets himself up into the top 20 as well. But see what he can do in the remaining portions of this session. Tell you what, Grant Karekas suddenly for a moment was going very, very quickly in the Delta, but I think he overshot the hairpin just a smidge and has lost out a bit of time there. Will get himself into a 25. Luke Whitehead's got to the top of the time sheets ahead of Osterman now. So Whitehead trying to see if he can get another pole position. Osterman gets himself to P1 though by 0.02 of a second. So these two, they went toe-to-toe at the Hungaroring. Grant Karekas did improve on that lap, got himself up to P5, but once again it is looking like it could be a showdown between the McLaren of Osterman and the Porsche of Luke Whitehead. And it all came down to strategy last time out at the Hungaroring. It was very much the overcut that played in the favour of the British driver. He just had the extra grip, had the extra confidence, and was able to bring it all into effect in the closing stages of that race. It was a tight fight to the end. The McLarens had a little bit of an overall pace advantage in the long run, but Luke Whitehead, once he had track position, he didn't look back after that poignant moment in the race. Lewis Rota's improving on his lap as well, although losing a little bit on the exit of Koppis, so looking pretty even with his Delta. Someone that is improving is Jadier, heading in towards the S's now. See how he fares through here. Just about trying to keep it within those track limits. You can take some liberties, but you will end up losing out pretty quickly if you do get it wrong, because at the curbs, they're fairly non-existent, but there's that divot in the track as you kind of head into that initial part of the compression, and depending on what car you're driving, we used to see especially the Ferraris really suffering through it. They had a lot of instability, so you really have to dial in the suspension. Jadier, big improvement for him to get up in towards the top 10. P9, that's a bit more like it for the man that last had his championship contention against Marco Bischoff. Lewis Rotas did improve, and the man that's been hovering around the top positions but hasn't quite been contesting for a win as of yet gets himself up into provisional pole, but his teammate Jacob Osterman, starting out his lap, is trying to see if he can nudge himself forward and extra positions. How many watts make up a John Watts? It's a difficult question to ask. It's one that I can't exactly put a number on, but I'll see what I can do in the long run. But I think, as we well established with the Case King Pro Series, it must be a pretty hefty amount, because I do have to go a million miles an hour to keep up with these guys. They keep the action rocking along through the entirety of these races, start to finish. But that's the way we love it here at the Pro Series. And if you're new to the LFM channel, big warm welcome to you. This is the Case King Pro Series, where some of the best drivers on the ACC platform, not an ideal line for Jacob Osterman. He sort of unfortunately shows up my previous comment. Ignore that. Generally speaking, some of the best drivers on the ACC platform coming together to compete for some fantastic prizes, and you can catch all of the weekly action and goodness here every Thursday evening. And of course, we also have the Endurance League on Sundays now as well, covered by Mr. Christian Romano. Just under 5 minutes left of qualifying to go, and Lewis Rota still right now by just half a tenth has that provisional pole position, but there are drivers continuing to improve and find lap time, and this is one of them. Man from Chile, Angelina Stroza, coming back to the world of sim racing after being out of things for a little bit of time after an injury to his ankle, if I do remember correctly. Now back and on pace once more, improving on this lap, trying to see what he can do. as heading in towards the final corner. The Porsche finding a decent amount of time on the exit. He's going to find 210s. Will get into the 25s. Decent lap from Instroza. Goes to P9. Displaces Jardier and gets himself in towards that top 10. He'll be hoping for a little bit more, though, as these Veloce cars looking very speedy. Luke Whitehead being one of them once more. Can he make it another pole position to his name? He's going extremely quick, and he does half a tenth over Lewis Roters. And he's going to pull over to the side of the road, get himself back to the pits, fresh set of boots on that Porsche, and see what he can do for maybe one final flying lap. Other cars improving at the moment. Niels Narks, bit unfamiliar territory for this man, driving the Aston Martin, of course, long-standing M4 driver, but we know he is an absolute legend of the sim racing community, has a whole wealth of experience across many a car, and so he can get any piece of machinery to work underneath. And this Aston Martin has shown some good pace as of late, and for Niels Narks it's no different, up into the top 5, just a tenth and a half away from the front row, and puts himself as the lead Aston Martin, just half a tenth in front of Amadeo Castorino. So watch out for this man. He's a wily old fox and will have a lot of tricks up his sleeves over the course of the race. Such a good shot down through the crane. Has a lot of speed carried through there. And the Aston Martin, we always talk about being one of these platforms that encourages you as a driver to push. It wants you to really thrash it. It just sometimes in previous BOPs, previous builds of ACC, it's just not quite had the turn in the handling capabilities, or sometimes the outright grunt to really compete at the front. But with this custom BOP into play, it just starts to even out those differences just a little bit. Look how close George Boothby was, using everything that he possibly could. Have that inside right tyre just within the pit lane exit of the white line there. And he is flying down those crane curves, seeing what he can do in that Veloce McLaren. We've got an improvement further down the order for Lorenzo Magnani in the number 31 Aston Martin. If you're wondering what these number plates correspond to, are these drivers' choices? Not quite. Of course, although I imagine some of them would want number 1. Luke Whitehead has gone back to the pit lane. Is he going to get out in time? I don't think he's going to, so there won't be an improvement for Luke Whitehead. 25.4 is the target to beat, and the likes of Lewis Roters just starting what could even be 2 more flying laps. He just crossed the line in time, so I have to see how it plays out. Luke Addison having a good attempt at the moment as well. Magnani, big improvement for him, up into P6. Aston Martin's 4, 5 and 6 at the moment. They are flying as it stands right now, and great effort there from the number 31 car to round back to the previous point. These numbers correspond to the driver's relative elo in the server. In the LFM ranking system, these drivers have effectively what is a measure of their skill rating, and when you see drivers with an elo that is a bit on the lower side, they will have a higher number within that server. So if you see those high number plates at the pointy end of the grid, then that is a great showing of their pace and development on the platform. And Lorenzo doing a fantastic job in the Aston Martin. Luke Addison not quite improving on that lap. Did do another 25.8, which is 300 shy of his best. Niels Narks slowing down, but he will get one more attempt, I do believe. Jacob Osterman should just about make it to the line in time to do another lap after this one. He's there or thereabouts on his Delta, trying to see what he can do, and he is actually going to abandon that one. He needs to go for another flying bid, and so is his teammate Lewis Roters, going to get very close to the line. Niels Narks won't improve. He bails to the pit lane, and so it'll be no higher than P5 for the BS Plus competition driver. What about the likes of Roters, Osterman, Boothby, Castorino? What can each one of them do? Whereabouts is George Boothby on his lap? He's coming down in towards the Melbourne hairpin now. And this will be his last attempt to improve in this session. We've got Noah Reader that's there or thereabouts in Delta. Joris Appel returning to the top split of the Pro Series as well. Down in P19 at the moment, trying to see if he can shave a 10th off that time. That would edge him all the way up to just outside of the top 10. Jardier won't make the top 10. He is going to stay down in P12. What is George Boothby going to do? It's very close with his previous lap time. He gets himself up to P3, but it's not going to be another pole position for George Boothby. And now all eyes on the likes of Osterman and Roters. And you see the 2 ITB racing cars very close on circuit, very close in lap time as well as Magnani, Korekis, Addison. No more improvements for any of them. They are down in the pit lane. And these 2 McLarens, they're very even with their previous laps. No, Reeder's found a chunk of time, although he's lost it on the exit of the hairpin, I do believe, as Marco Schade currently being registered as going purple at the moment on this lap. He's going to be coming into the hairpin. He's just ahead of the two McLarens. Is this a timing error, or is the Honda flying around Donington Park? And for Schade, as he crosses the line, it's only good enough for P17. Rotors, though, is on a mighty lap. Osterman will only stay P4, but Lewis Rotors, what can he do? And it's not quite enough. He lost it on the exit of the hairpin then. And in the end, he will have to start on the other side of that front row, with Luke Whitehead taking another pole position to his name. And something that was brought up very eagle-eyed of you in the chat about those drivers that are using potentially, arguably, a little bit of an exploit around this circuit, that, like I say, the stewards are monitoring things very closely in race control and applying some penalties to drivers that haven't adhered to the rulings within qualifying. So we'll wait for the grid to our wonderful, wonderful overlays to come on through. We can go for a little bit of a walk down the grid for Luke Whitehead. Once again, in fine form. He's never really out of form. Sometimes that Porsche can be a little bit lazy around the circuit. We've seen it fall out of contention from time to time, and hasn't been a car that's really been in contention in the last couple of seasons, as you know, the BOP within the game just hasn't really fallen in favour of this car. But now with the custom BOP this season, and with a very, very fast driver behind the wheel of Luke Whitehead, who is extremely familiar with this platform, it is looking like it is going to be pretty handy once again, and we'll see how he gets on this evening. Just wait for those lovely overlays to come on through. We'll have a little bit of a walk through our grid, and yeah, just another point, the wonderful Pro Series doing what it does at best. Very close racing between everyone in qualifying there, and everyone within a second, and not short lap time either. So that just goes to show exactly the pace of this grid. Luke Whitehead, though, starts at the front of this field with a pole position for the number 4 car in the Sova, Lewis Rotors. Great performance from him again. Starts alongside him with George Boothby and Jacob Osterman making up the second row of the grid. Niels Narks not quite able to get himself in towards that pointy end of the grid, but I think he'll still be pretty happy to be the lead Aston Martin ahead of Amadeo Castorino, race winner at Bathurst, and certainly a man that is still in contention for this championship, there's no doubt. Of course, early stages, but every point counts. Lorenzo Magnani, great effort from him to line up P7 on the grid with Grant Carreras in the number 2 McLaren. He starts P8. Luke Addison in that Ferrari 296, finding a bit of form around this Donington Park circuit. The high downforce prototype-like nature of that car playing into good favour of the South African driver Marco Bischoff, rounding out the top 10 for Sprout Esports in that Lamborghini. Zane Strozer, the number 29, as he continues his fine return into the world of sim racing. Great to have him back on our grid. Starts P11. Fantastic effort from him. Joris Appel, another man returning to the championship. Been a while since we have seen him, and he gets himself up into P12. Jardier dropping down to P13 in the end of that qualifying session, as our resident Estonian Renault Koots starts P14 in this grid, as cars start to make their way down to the tarmac as it closes in on the beginning of this 60-minute race. Paul Lofmeyer, another strong qualifying from him. He has gone from strength to strength over the last half a season or so, and finding good pace to get himself in those top 15 positions. No Reader and Marco Schade make up the next couple of cars, with Mattia De Campo in the next of the 296s, starting in P18, followed up by Sasha Vasta in the very distinct Unicorns of Love liveried Mercedes. And then rounding out the top 20, previous race winner Dario Iamolo starts in the final of those top 20 spots in the number 13 Lamborghini, and lining up alongside him will be the next of those Lamborghinis, Aidan Walsingham, another race winner, and we'll have to see how he gets on as another one of our Lamborghinis. Quite the cluster over here. Mateus Kuhn in the 22nd spot, and shocker there. He went a little bit unnoticed in all that. Tinko van der Velde down in 23rd place. We know how good his racecraft can be and that he can progress through the field, but maybe that M4 really not looking like the car that you want to be in this evening. Front engined, maybe not quite as nippy through some of the tighter parts of this track, but maybe a stable platform that can work some wonders over the course of the race. Greco in the number 33 car starts 24th place with Oliver Ferres, followed up by Sean Tempest, Valentin Barrier, and then down to Henrik Gamble, number 28 in P28, as another one of that Sprout Esports crew. Jimmy Holm, a man that has had a little bit of support in the chat from time to time, alongside this man who's definitely had sometimes support, sometimes screaming through the chat at the Bentley driver. Of course, he had a little bit of an unfortunate moment of Paul Ricard. Got a drive-through penalty, I think maybe by about lap 2. For track limits, so it does vary a little bit for Mr. Carpet from time to time, but the Bentley driver will be seeing what he can do this evening. Dennis Vitschorka and Leonardo Pagano make the 16th row of the grid, with Oystein Brennan in the next of the BMWs. He starts in 33rd ahead of Florian Duacop. See what he can do from that position on the grid, one of our biggest movers last week. Nikolai Poldikov in the number 26 starts in 35th position, and Samuel Foch, the last on the grid, but definitely not the least loved, of course. Big personality and streamer, and also wielding that wonderful Bentley as well, which will get him some bonus points, I have no doubt, in terms of people's views and appreciation for that man. We'll see as drivers closing in towards the start-finish line and building up the tension, are ready to go in this race. The pizzas are ready to be consumed and action is ready to be observed here in the Case King Pro Series. Everyone dialed in, and I tell you what, everybody, buckle yourselves in, because Hungaroring, like I say, a circuit where it's difficult to overtake at, put on absolutely non-stop incredible action. Donington Park, there's a few more opportunities, but it's a tricky and technical circuit, so there's going to be glorious action all the way to the very end. And we do have that wonderful mix of cars, the Bentleys, the Honda NSXs. They are back, and all thanks to that custom BOP that a lot of the community worked so hard to generate, and we're rewarded by incredible, incredible racing, which is about to get underway. Luke Whitehead, the man that won last time out, he's the winningest driver of Season 12. Can he make it a third victory to his ever-growing tally, or will Lewis Rotors get that McLaren to the top spot in the grid for the first time this season, waiting for the lights to go out? And then they go underway there. It's a fantastic start from Luke Whitehead. Osterman trying to apply the pressure. George Boothby around the outside in towards turn 1. They go. Whitehead maintaining the lead though. Rotors trying to get a comeback on the exit. Osterman all the way around the outside and showed no space from George Boothby. It holds on to P4 for the time being as the Aston Martins go side by side. That's Niels Narks trying to go around the outside in towards the crater curves. Brave stuff from the veteran sim racer, but he can't make his way by. And Castorino says thank you very much. I'll try to get a better exit. Not so good for Grantis Garek as he's dropping like a stone on the exit of Old Hairpin. Up towards the pointy end though is a breakaway for Whitehead and Rotors. Luke Whitehead holding on to that lead. Castorino and Niels Narks still side by side, and it's the Italian who looks like he's going to get it underway in towards Coppice Corner, and he does progress in towards that P4 spot. And Niels Narks though is not done. He is fighting hard for this one. Will go on board with the BS Plus competition driver if my overlay will respond. Looking towards the inside line. Bit too brave to do that this early on in the race. 60 minutes of action still available for opportunities, but Niels Narks able to keep himself composed, and he holds on to what is now P6 in the field. But it's Luke Whitehead ahead of Lewis Rotors. George Boothby with his robust defence as they are swapping a position down at the hairpin. Lodmeyer, Renault Coots swapping around with Joris Appel as well. Timu Carpenter trying to go around the outside of the Mercedes. Sasha Vassner will have the inside line heading in towards the final corner. And I think there's been an incident for Valentin Barrier further down the field. I don't even think I can grab his car anymore, so I think the Frenchman may have left the server altogether. Carpenter makes his way through, though, and now Sasha Vassner under pressure from the reigning champion, but we will have to quickly jump back towards the top 6, because look at this, absolutely flying down towards Craig and Kurtz Osterman, trying to go around the outside, down to the inside, in towards Old Hairpin. Can't find opportunity on George Boothby. Pole has already been mowed down in the opening part of this race as they fly the way up the hill for the second time. As absolutely line astern, trying to find any opportunity, any advantage that they can. And right now it sees Aston Martins that are hustling around the back of these McLarens. They fired up their tyres pretty quickly, and they are giving a bit of a tough time. Jacob Osterman, fantastic run out through Coppice Corner, and see what he can do heading towards the chicane. You can see Nils hunting around for an opportunity behind Castorino, but Castorino not doing any unnecessary defence, although in actual fact, I don't think the greatest of exit for Nils Nark, but Magnani is a little bit too far behind Osterman. Does he think about sending one up the inside? He does it, but I tell you what, Karppinen has made a move past Florian Duakop, I do believe, although it's a bit of a poor exit. Out of the corner, maybe under pressure as they head down in towards Melbourne Hairpin. Sasha Vassner wants a piece of this. Sasha Vassner wants a lot from this. Florian Duakop has to give up the inside line, and the Mercedes heads back on through. Tingo van der Velde struggling to make progress, down in 27th position. Not what he would have wanted, and something has happened at the front of the field. George Boothby well down the order, and something has kicked off in the opening phase of this race. Let's see if we can try to catch up with what took place there. As going towards the hairpin, he's been tanked around by Osterman. It all got very bunched up together, and George Boothby having to recover. And Jacob Osterman may be hit with a penalty there. And I can tell you what, that has sent a great deal of chaos running down the tail end of the top 10. As we'll go back to live pictures in just a moment. But there is barely anything to choose between that train of cars. But unfortunately, I think a mistake there, a misjudgment from Osterman. The closing speed in that chicane, it comes at you pretty rapidly. We'll head back to Jardier, trying to go around the outside of his good friend and teammate, Angel Inostroza. But Inostroza holds on strong. Yorita Pell losing out. They're almost 4 wide, heading down towards the chicane. It's all been maintained out at the front of the field. How are they going to fit through here? Renault Kutz holds on to position, but it's the Ferrari of Yorita Pell around the outside of Noah Reader. Noah Reader now under pressure from George Boothby, trying to recover his way through the field down towards Melbourne Hairpin. Sprout Esport Lamborghini towards the inside line, and there is also the ITB Racing Lamborghini, and that's around. Yorita Pell almost around, and almost sends Mateus Kern around on the exit as well. George Boothby, I think, can he slot his way through and gain a position? He's got the ITB Racing car on his outside line, but I think he is going to get it done. And Mateus could have been sent around by the McLaren of Makovsky. I do believe his cars all bumping into one another. Chaos down here. Carpenter's into the wall. Tingo van der Velde caught up into it. Oh my goodness, it's a disaster. At the Melbourne Hairpin, cars absolutely sent everywhere. Walsingham further down the order. A lot of damage on board one of the McLarens there. Iemelo's in the pits. A major contact and major ramifications in this race already. Tinko van der Velde continuing to lose out, flashing the lights on the outside line of turn 1 there, but manages to slot back into position. And I think we have to try having a go at seeing what on earth happened there between all of our drivers. You see, so this is going quite far back in the lap now. This is with Tinko van der Velde, and he is just going to find a whole heap of cars around him. We'll try to see if we can keep up with. So here's Makovsky then. So there was a McLaren that was sent around. I'm not sure who that was, but we head in towards top level pictures. You can see there's Mateus Kern. There's the tap. He gets sent around. Makovsky does manage to make his way through, and then it's going to be chaos arriving here on seed. Iemelo absolutely blindsided, clatters his way into all of those cars, and absolute chaos down here at the tail end of the pack, and that has sent a lot of cars into the pits, a lot of cars out of contention. Karppinen is in the pits as well, and very big things happening in this race. Meanwhile, whilst Osterman has set the fastest lap of the race, and by a good margin as well, he may be hit with a penalty in the not too distant future. We'll keep an eye on how the stewards have been getting on, trying to deal with these incidents. Right now, we do have a 5-second time penalty for the number 3 car, and that belongs to George Boothby. George Boothby has a penalty, and that is for that opening lap incident on the exit of turn 1 for forcing a car off the track, and that was Osterman being sent onto the dirt, so the stewards not happy with what George did on the exit of the first turn there. And to add to his pain, he now has a 5-second penalty that he will end up serving in his compulsory pit stop. Of course, that pit window will open up in around 15 minutes time as we look further down the order, as still very busy with 2 296s of Jimmy Holm and Mattia De Campo battling almost side by side on the exit. It's a great exit from Mattia De Campo. They will go on board the Italian drivers. Jimmy Holm holding that inside line. Surely there won't be an opportunity to go around the outside in towards the chicane. That would be madness. Mattia De Campo's trying to hold that line barely a hair's width between them, and in the end he is compromised, and behind them it's all kicked off. Aidan Walsingham's off the road. Marco Schada flying on through in the Honda NSX down in towards the Melbourne hairpin, and it was Oliver Ferris, I do believe, that was involved in that contact earlier on. He's bringing Aidan Walsingham under pressure for Honda, trying to get the better exit, and he's almost sent around from the 296, but he uses the VTEC power of that car, and he manages to get himself up a position. Meanwhile, Ferris versus Walsingham, these two have already had a very busy time. Matthias Gunn hot on their heels as well. He was, of course, sent around at that major incident at the hairpin. I'm not sure how much damage he picked up along the way. He looks certainly to be at least less worse for wear than the McLaren of Ferris, who has made his way through, but Walsingham is trying to find an opportunity on the exit to see what he can do. Stuck behind the rear wing of the McLaren, and there's aero damage on board that car as well. Will it open up a gap in towards the odd hairpin? Walsingham thinks about it, but he's unable to get that car on the inside line. Has he got the grunt, the V10 power up the hill versus the McLaren? The McLaren, though, it's pretty speedy in a straight line. Maybe not speedy enough. Is it going to be a dive towards the right-hander? And it won't be. And he's got to be wary of Matthias Gunn all up in his mirrors, trying to find any opportunity to bring his race back into contention. As I see a lot of no further actions in the steward's room, but we've only made it about as far as less than a minute into this race. So hold on, everybody. Things will be addressed, I think, in just a little bit of time, as Walsingham unable to find opportunity in towards the chicane. Less than 10 minutes of this race has gone by so far. And now it's Tinko van der Velde versus Oystein Brenham, and the experience and the competitiveness of van der Velde making his way through now up into 21st position. It's a long way for the BMW, though. He's far away from where we would anticipate for the reigning champion. As white flags for Castorino and Nils Narks, maybe just a little bit of an instant towards turn 1. Doesn't look like anything too major, though, but just checking in on our leaders, Luke Whitehead, Lewis Roters and Osterman, all pushing everything to the very limit on the exit of turn 4 there. But Luke Whitehead still holding on to that race lead. Osterman's struggling a little bit to close this gap, but he is just edging ever closer. But of course, he could have a penalty heading his way, and Roters right now looking very, very competitive. Is it going to be a game of strategy once more? I tell you what, Nils Narks as well, the Aston Martins, they're not out of this just yet. Last lap, 25.8 for Nils, and that is the fastest lap of the race, and just a smidge slower than him, but still faster than all the cars ahead was Amadeo Castorino. So these Aston Martins closing the gap and trying to see if they can do anything about this lead battle. Osterman very late on the brakes. He's very, very late and deep into that corner. And Castorino, he is sniffing for an opportunity. He wants to see, can he give an Aston Martin on the podium once more, and maybe even in contention for another race victory. 5-second penalty for the number 6 car, and that belongs to Jardier. So, and that is for forcing another car off a track as well. So, not a fun time so far for a lot of the Lotte guys, because even Luke Whitehead, he may be leading this race, but he's got a lot of pressure with the ITB Racing McLaren hot on his heels behind, trying to see if he can force a mistake from the British driver, trying to see if he can take victory on home soil. Flying through the sequence of corners, big commitment there, and Lewis Roters, in actual fact, has a fantastic run on Luke Whitehead. He's all over the rear diffuser. Luke Whitehead, he very wisely places his car in towards that right-hander, but look at this, absolutely nothing between the Porsche and the McLaren, and Lewis Roters is edging ever closer, and that's very, very wide in towards Coppice, but the traction, the torque of that flat 6 powered Porsche is just enough maybe, but he still has to go defensive towards the chicane, looking up the inside. No, for Lewis Roters, almost into the gearbox of the Porsche driver, but Luke Whitehead, he's going to hold on for the time being, and we'll see if there is going to be a send towards Melbourne hairpin. Lewis Roters waiting more patiently than that, but look at this, Castorino, Nils Narks brought along for the action, and this could very quickly turn into a 5-way fight. Meanwhile, George Boothby, I think, just made a move and has got himself up into P14 as he continues to try to recover his way through the order in this race. Heading now on to lap number 8 then. Whitehead could exit out the final corners. Kicking off though further down the grid. Dennis Veetstalker down the inside of Florian Duakop. Also this scrap as well, still very messy. Mateus Good versus Oliver Ferris on the exit there. Aidan Walsingham will go on board the rear diffuser of his Lamborghini as he sees the McLaren and the other ITB racing car at the tail end of the order battling away. It will look like it's going to be the McLaren that holds on to that position for the time being, but I imagine these stewards are going to be in for quite the busy time of this one tonight because it is all kicking off. I told you, this is what the historic circuits bring out. These authentic hardcore racing, and it brings out some of the best, some of the scrappiest, but some of the most hardcore and dramatic action that you can possibly get in the world of sim racing. Not a great exit for Luke Whitehead, a worse one for Lewis Roters, in now maybe vulnerable to his teammate Osterman, pushing along, trying to see if he can find opportunity to get himself in towards that P2 spot, and Castorino, Niels Narg there hunting as well. And it can all go wrong so quickly. You need to be committed and quick through that chicane. And Osterman's done just that. Does he launch an attack on his teammate? No, he's going to be a little bit more patient than that. A bit kinder. You've got to be careful. Under brakes there. He's trying to go too deep into that part of the circuit already. And those Aston Martins waiting, lurking for any opportunity that comes their way. That's just a bit of an update in terms of those cars that have made their way into the pits. We've got Joris Appel, Iamelo still in the pits. Vanity Barrier is back out on circuit. And then I think we've had a few retirements there. I think fan favourite Mr. Carpet has unfortunately also left the server as well. Of course, caught up in that incident. Got a lot of damage. So did a lot of the grid, and has decided to call it a day. And unfortunately, that can be the way it goes. It's a tricky part of the circuit, an unusual part of the circuit to have such a calamity as well. As that's Rotors really pushing it on the exit turn 4. He's got to be careful not to take too much of his tyres out in the early phase of this race, because with Osterman and Castorino, it's very much holding on to the back of this train. Niels Narg's a little bit further back, but perhaps that's deliberate. Like I say, he's a very, very wise man. And he might just be waiting, just biding his time, keeping his tyres alive and within touching distance of any opportunities that come his way. But he can see how much chaos has been taking place in this race already. Luke Whitehead trying to open up the entry in towards the chicane as much as he can, and it works very nicely. Osterman a little bit wide on the exit there, drops a wheel in the dirt, but still okay for the time being. As he gets, again, goes a little bit deep and gets himself stuck behind his teammate there. Grant Korekas also closing distance on the next of the Aston Martins. George Boothby sends an attack down the inside of Paul Lobmeyer. Paul Lobmeyer's not having any of it. He's been having some great form recently, trying to use that torque of the Porsche. Does he go down the inside in towards the final corner? No, he's almost into the gearbox of George Boothby. We've seen it go wrong through that turn before, but he manages to judge it just about perfectly, and George Boothby then back up into P13 as he continues the climb up through the field. And the way that these scraps and battles are taking place at the moment, he can still very much be in contention for a top 10 finish. His drivers continuing to try to find any opportunity they can. Grantis Korekas 0.4 of a second faster than the Aston Martin ahead of him on the last lap. I see Magnani really trying to get every ounce of circuit that he can. Maybe the front tyres just struggling to bite through this Donington Park track layout. And we'll see in towards Coppice. It does look like that McLaren's just a little bit happier, a bit pointier mid-corner, and he's able to then get the power down just a little bit better as a result. But the Aston Martin holding on strong for the time being as we head on board the rear diffuser for just a moment. I'm keeping an eye on those deltas. Look at that, the top 5 absolutely separated by nothing. So we now head towards the Melbourne hairpin. Anything from Grant Korekas. He's still applying the pressure, but is not able to make a move. And it looks like the Aston Martin has good enough grunt on the exit. Still pretty decent exit from the number 31 car. The Astons typically on the exit slow speed corners have struggled somewhat, but maybe this sort of TC off kind of meta that we're seeing in the world of ACC at the moment, maybe just in a little bit of a better position than normal. As towards the front of the field, that gap did open up briefly between Whitehead and Rotors, but again, it's just down to a few tenths of a second. Also, big thank you and a warm welcome to all of those that have already followed the channel during the course of this stream. We're now just 25 away from a wonderful 900 follow mark. So if you are enjoying the action, do consider following the channel, because the Case King Pro Series has all this goodness every single week. And Lewis Rotors, once again, absolutely nose-to-tail stuff between your two leaders and the likes of his teammate Osterman, with the two Aston Martins in hot pursuit, not too far behind. Trying to see if there's any chance for them to make their way forward through field. It really is. This scrap at the moment is the closest on circuit. Walsingham versus De Campo is pretty close as well, but nowhere near the margins of our leading five. Just checking in on penalties. We've managed to catch up a little bit in terms of penalties, and there is a stop-go penalty for the number 9 car, and that number 9 car belongs to Matthias Kuhn. So Matthias Kuhn gets... surely not. I don't know if that's been delivered to the wrong car, because Matthias Kuhn was the one that was sent around. Stop and go 10-second penalty for the number 9. Other car involved was number 13, was Iemelo. Unless there was an incident that happened elsewhere, but it does seem to very much be for what took place. And we'll have to see what plays out later on in this race, but I'd be very surprised, because at least on the replays that we reviewed at the time, from what I remember... And I see, as Mr. Carpet, unfortunate stuff for the resident Bentley driver, just informing me that there was unfortunately another incident that took place a bit earlier than that, and that he has caused a major crash, and that is what has brought upon the penalty for the German driver. So big disaster for the Lamborghini, and unfortunate stuff for the Bentley driver. But nice to have you in the chat, Timu, and we'll follow the action all the way to the end. Buckle in, because as you've probably already experienced, it's a pretty hectic one, and I don't think it's going to get any simpler as we make our way in towards the 20-minute mark, just about a third of the way through this race. And the action within this top 5, absolutely nip and tuck. Luke Whitehead just gets a little bit of an advantage here, but then the McLarens, they're strong in that opening sector. They can just carry so much speed through the high-speed stuff, but this final sector, this is Porsche territory. This is where the braking, the acceleration, that initial grunt of that naturally aspirated flat 6 really starts to come into play, and you can see it. The gap was 4 tenths, now it's 7 tenths, but as we make our way through Sector 1 and Sector 2, it's all going to change, much like the positions between Dennis Wietschorker and Oystein Brenham in that BMW, swapping down at the Melbourne hairpin, and we'll try to see if we can catch what happened between these two just a moment ago. Very much an opportunistic move, I would imagine, from the McLaren driver, capitalising on a poor exit from the BMW, perhaps, as we head in towards the chicane. And not actually initially looking like it's in too much contention. Is it going to be an absolute send from downtown from the McLaren? It is. Goes down the inside. Oystein Brenham, very forgiving on the entry. The Norwegian driver looking in his mirrors and making sure to not turn in too quickly. But that was an ambitious move from the McLaren driver. He does get it done and stops in the end. But Dennis Wietschorker gets himself up to 22nd place, and now will charge on ahead, trying to close down on the reigning champion Tinko van der Velde. But I think in actual fact, Tinko trying to break his way in towards that top 20, and we'll see if he can make his way past the German driver of Sasha Vassner in that Unicorns of Love Mercedes. Meanwhile, Greg Correca still all over the gearbox of the Italian in the Aston Martin, as George Boothby sends one down the inside of Renault Kutz, the Estonian driver unable to contend with the pace of George Boothby, and up into P12, the Veloce driver. He's not done just yet. Pit window has now opened, and Niels Knox going for a very early undercut. Of course, this is a man, bear in mind, so this is, there are no damage, no repairs to be done on that front. He wants fresh tyres. He wants to be within that undercut window to really try to get that track position. We know the Aston Martin can look after its tyres pretty well over the course of a race. Maybe takes a bit more out of the fronts than the mid-engined platform of the McLarens that sit ahead of him, but he has fastest lap of the race at the moment. He clearly has pace in the early stage of the stint, and now he's looking to deploy and use it. And the question will be, what will be the response of these other drivers? Whitehead, Rotors, Castorino, Osterman, all very much close to one another. Do you do what Luke Whitehead did last week at the Hungary? Do you play the overcut strategy and see if it all comes good in the end? But we know it can be tricky to make these overtakes stick. Osterman all over the gearbox of his teammates, and Lewis Roters feeling the pressure of a man that has been in contention for every single race victory so far this season, and is having a very solid campaign overall. Just checking in once more with the stewards. So we've got a warning for the number 11 car for not holding the brake, and that was Aidan Walsingham. In fact, so I believe that could have been for that incident towards this very corner. As we see, Osterman is going to come into the pit. So Osterman trying to cover off the undercuts of Nils Niox and trying to see if he can undercut his teammate and Luke Whitehead that sits in front of him. They did make the undercut work at Hungary, but in the end, the cornering potential of the Porsche, once they had those fresh tyres on, was just a bit too much to contend with for the McLarens. And as far as other incidents go, no further penalties have been dished out at this point in time. Is there a penalty for the number 34 and 21 as also Aidan Walsingham comes into the pits? So Sean Tempest, I don't believe, has had a penalty as of yet, as Lewis Roters very close to the back of Luke Whitehead. And this is what Osterman and Nils Niox will be wanting, as just check the number 34 isn't in the server anymore, I don't believe, so I do not know, I'm afraid. But this is very much going to be all about that strategy game. Osterman just coming out of the pits right now. Where is Nils Niox? Nils Niox nowhere to be seen. He's just a few, about maybe 6-7 car lengths behind Jacob Osterman, so I don't know if he had a slow pit entry, maybe a slow stop, could have missed his box or something like that, but the undercut certainly, on raw pace alone, doesn't seem to have worked very well at all. Leonardo Pagano going up a position as Aidan Walsingham coming out of the pits now in the Veloce Lamborghini. And we'll see as they head on to the very next lap. Luke Whitehead, he's decided to come into the pits now, covering off any further undercuts, but it doesn't look particularly strong. So it could be the likes of Lewis Roters and Amadeo Castorino that are in a good position to make use of that extra fresh rubber, because maybe his tyres taking a little bit longer to fire things up. As, oh dear, as Sasha Fassner, thankfully, has teleported back into the realms of reality. But it did look like for a moment we were going to lose him in towards the barrier, and I'm sure that maybe gave a little bit of a scare to Tinko van der Velde. But in fact, we'll go on board the rear diffuser of Fassner. As you can see, that BMW applying a lot of pressure. As Luke Whitehead, I think, is just starting to leave the pits now. Where is Osterman? He's just coming out of the final corner and will go on board the front splitter. Where is Luke Whitehead? He's just coming out now, and it does look like these overcut strategies, at least for the time being, are still being effective, because Luke Whitehead visibly further ahead of Osterman than he was before the McLaren came into the pits. And I'll tell you what that means. The likes of Lewis Roters and Castorino, whilst they've got to be careful maybe not to go too far with this overcut strategy, it's very easy to do, as Osterman got a big slide through there. Does that give an opportunity to Nils Niox? No, he's still a couple of seconds behind, as Noah Eder and Paul Lobmeyer side by side through the Melbourne hairpin. Lewis Roters comes into the pits now, as does Grant Korekas, and it goes to the Aston Martin driver to lead the pack. As who was that? That was Renault Coates coming into the pits as well. No Reader in that Sprout Lamborghini. Still a lot of pressure from the German driver in the Porsche, but they've got to be careful not to scrap too much at this stage, because the power of the undercut is not just getting the fresh set of tyres, but when you are amongst another pack of cars, if those cars are scrapping, if you're able to run around in clean air and do your effectively almost like a qualifying style series of laps, that gains you more time than anything, whether in terms of kind of fresh tyres, all that sort of stuff. It's so easy to lose time if you're battling with another car, so they've got to be very careful. George Boothby closing in on his good friend and teammate Jardier in the number 6 car. And I'm not sure he'll make it too difficult for Boothby, because he has been on an absolute resurgence through the field. May start to fight for it a little bit as Lewis Roters slots his way into P2. ahead of his teammate Osterman, but the crucial thing is he has 2 to 3 lap fresher tyres, I think, over his teammate, and just a little bit of a smaller advantage over the Porsche, but that could be all the advantage that he potentially needs, but those tyres are fired up on Osterman's car, and they're going to take a little bit of extra time for Lewis Roters. And Osterman, he's looking for an opportunity, he's not finding it just yet. Meanwhile, Norita versus Paul Lobmeyer in towards the final corner. Lobmeyer trying to go for the over and under, but covered off by Lamborghini, and in actual fact they'll both go into the pits. That battle will restore itself in just a moment. Meanwhile, looking back, Luke Whitehead getting himself a little bit of an advantage over these ITB racing cars, and this is not helping either one of them to contend for race victory, as that's a dip into the gravel, could even be a cut for the McLaren driver. Aidan Walsingham applying the pressure to Marco Schada, who I think has just come out of the pits in the Honda NSX, whereas Walsingham a bit longer on those tyres, has those up to temperature a little bit better than the car that sits ahead of him, and may be able to apply the pressure for an opportunity, for an overtake. Can he do anything? Heading in towards the chicane, he just shows his nose a little bit, but you've got to be so brave to try to do something there, as more cars coming into the pits there. Order gradually re-establishing itself, but Castorino still staying out, so is McNaney, as Anderson, Bischoff, Inestrosa, Jardier, Gamble, Podikov, Vassner, Van der Velde, Wietschoker, all deciding to go longer in this race. So is always time Brenham, Duakop, Ferris, all staying out as of right now. George Boothby having emerged out of the pits immediately on the attack of Paul Lobmeyer. And we'll see what the British driver can do. You'd have to think, pace-wise, that he should have an opportunity and advantage. Nietzsche was going on down here, and it's all kicking off. Oh my goodness, 3 wide through turn 1, and Marco Schada, opportunistic as you like, sends it between the 2 Ferraris. Barely anything given, and Mattia De Campo off into the grass. Can he rejoin safely in towards the exit of turn 4? He's scrubbing off for speed very nicely. Does manage to do so as well, but Marco Schada take about an incredible move from the Honda driver to slide way through there, and Aidan Walsingham carried on, trying to resurge his way through the field, and he's going to get past the 296s as well, and up into what is now 27th position. And Jimmy Holm drops down to 28th place. More cars making their way into the pits. Your leaders, your effective leaders in this race, still Whitehead, Roters, Osterman and Niox. Castorino not coming into the pits just yet, as George Boothby's made another move in that McLaren. Paul Lobmeyer trying to find another opportunity to see if he can go back through, but I don't think he's going to be able to. And the McLaren now up into 21st place, but of course as they pass those in the pits, that will all continue to change and update. And we'll see where these positions lies. That's Jardier coming out of the pits right now. And of course, these two were battling close to one another, but Jardier has he just kept enough over his teammate, and he has. But George Boothby's tyres will be up to temperature. They will be ready to battle, and Jardier may have a little bit of a tough time. Tico van der Velde doesn't have a great time either. He's stuck behind Makovsky further down the order. A lot of these groups very close, nip and tuck between one another. You've got your leaders 1, 2, 3 and 4, with Lewis Roters still trying to apply the pressure to Luke Whitehead, and he's got his teammate Osterman and Niels Narks just still patiently waiting in the background. The undercut hasn't helped him massively, but he is still very much in contention with this train. And Amadeo Castorino, I can tell you, has now come into the pit lane. He'll be hoping that these drivers have done a lot of scrapping and a lot of fighting. It's been close, but it's still been pretty clean hot lap style from each of these cars. But right now, again, it does look like the Porsche just doesn't quite have the pace and the edge in race trim over these McLarens, but Luke Whitehead is doing just enough. Where is Castorino? We'll find out in a minute. There we go. He is now underway, heading down the pit lane then. Luke Whitehead coming on through. Here comes the train of cars. We'll see the other Aston Martin shortly as they head towards the end of pit lane. There we go. And on pit exit, Castorino is going to go to the back of that train, but he has much fresher tyres than this entire group. And now it's all a case of trying to get those fired up. Half of this race left to go, and he could be in a great position, especially if these cars do start to scrap away more intensely. Those tyres will be a godsend for him in wheel-to-wheel combat. Lewis Roters pushing the limits on the exit of turn 4 once more, as Osterman a little bit further away from his teammate than he would have liked. Kicking off again, Tico Van der Velde down the inside of Sasha Vassen now, side by side through a crane. Got the Lamborghini of Henrik Gamble will go on board with him as they fly down through turn number 2, turn number 3, and in towards this fast right-hander. Tinko still on the inside line, no love lost, and Sasha Vassen sent off on the exit on the grass. I think Dennis Wietschalk is going to go on through as well. Around the outside he goes, and Henrik Gamble, great bit of momentum for him, great bit of opportunistic driving, and will there be a penalty coming the way of the reigning champ? We'll have to see. Meanwhile, Marco Schade trying to send one down the inside of Florian Durakop on his compatriot. A little bit of contact, and Ada Walsingham again is going to slot on through, and there's nothing the BMW driver can do. And Walsingham gets himself up into 24th position as he continues to follow that NSX through the field. Your remaining cars that had not come into the pits of Brenner, Bischoff, and Magnani have now served their stop. And so official order will be restored in just a moment. And we'll see what happens between these cars then. Castorino taking a little bit of time to get those tyres up to temperature. Marco Schade's brought out the yellow flag, and he's running very slowly there, and I think he's going to be retiring from this race. What on earth has happened to the NSX? Is there going to be contact between himself and Aidan Walsingham, or is it just going to go wrong through the chicane? It's a tricky segment of the circuit, there's no doubt. Heading in towards the first apex then, let's see what happens to the Honda driver. Goes through the first, goes through the second. A little bit of an oscillation there. I think he's picked up a drive-through. That is the actions of a man that has been a little bit defeated mentally, I think, after receiving a drive-through penalty, and has decided to pull over to the side. Difficult stuff, as meanwhile Niels Knox finds an opportunity, potentially go around the outside of Jacob Osterman, and he's challenging for it. Osterman very late on the brakes, and this is allowing Castorino to get a fantastic run. It's a slide from Niels Knox, and now he's under pressure from the other Aston Martin. He goes from being hunted to potentially the hunted. Castorino, though, can't get to the inside line. Niels Knox just about manages to defend enough as they head in towards the Melbourne hairpin, so it's still Whitehead, Rotors, Osterman, Knox, and Castorino as your top 5 then. And Grant Skarek is just a couple of seconds behind, just hoping that it'll all kick off. We've seen very dramatic things already happen in this race, and it could continue to do so. As flying on down towards turn 1 again, Lewis Rotors looking very quick. Just also further down, there was gaps that kind of started to spread about over the course of that first stint, but they have all started to converge on one another again. George Boothby, Jardier, very, very close once more on circuit course. George Boothby's tyres very in a better condition. I had to quickly switch over to the fight for the lead, because for a moment there, Lewis Rotors was back within a tenth of Luke Whitehead. He had to withstand a lot of pressure last week at the Hungaroring, had to fight his way back into the race lead, but this time around, it's all about defence. It's all about just trying to keep those McLarens, the Aston Martins, behind, and he is not being allowed to breathe at any moment in this race. Neither am I, for a start, up here in the commentary box, as they fly on down towards the chicane once more. Lewis Rotors, can he line up a good exit through the chicane? But Luke Whitehead, he's consistent through there, able to get a good run down towards the hairpin. And crucially, the Porsche is very fast at this point of the circuit. And this is obviously one of the most prevalent overtaking opportunities that we have here at Donington Park. So being quick here is not just the strength to make progress through the field, but also to try to hold onto track position, because through the fast stuff, unless you get good exit out through turn 4, you could use that momentum to climb further up the hill. Very difficult to make a move. George Boothby trying to send one on the inside, what's been his favourite corner for opportunities today. Can he do anything in towards the final turn? He can't, although Johnny a little bit deep on the brakes there. Won't have helped his line towards turn 1 whatsoever. As we go on board the front splitter of George Boothby, will he send it down the inside? Surely he's close enough to. He's going to commit to the move now, does he? No, he's a little bit kinder to his good friend, and Jardier will hold on to P12 for the time being, but I'm sure that Mr. Boothby is going to be trying to make his way through any time now, as they are a second away from that Sprout Esport Lamborghini of Noah Reeder, just outside of the top 10 positions, with his teammate Marco Bischoff currently occupying that P10 spots. Meanwhile, Niels Knox and Castorino dropping a little bit away from this lead group. I say a little bit away, the gap's opened up to around half second, and in actual fact, just in one turn, Niels has already brought it back down again. But I tell you what, Karekas moving along pretty handily as well. just chipping away bit by bit out of this lead bunch. And like I say, keep an eye out for that man. He is fantastic in wheel-to-wheel racing. And you see just a little bit of movement on the entry to the braking zone from Luke Whitehead. Nothing that should get anything particularly sort of protestable as such, but just to make Rotors hesitate on trying to send one up the inside, you just need to show this is where my car's looking to go, unless you want to make contact, as George Boothby has completely overdone it in towards Melbourne Hairpin. He tried to get the job done. Meanwhile, Pagano, I think, has gone around on the exit of the chicane. So George Boothby unable to get past his teammate Jardier, but Leonardo Pagano getting it all wrong through the chicane there. He was under pressure, I think, from Makoski in the fellow 296. And we'll see. I said the Ferraris in the past ended up in a little bit of strife. And info there are a big disappointment for Marco Schade. He had an upshift problem. So in actual fact, it was entirely hardware related, not drive-through. Oh dear, contact on the exit. The finest, smallest of taps between the two 296s. Have to see how the stewards end up looking at that one. Leonardo Pagano managing to keep it out of the wall, but clearly not what he would have wanted to take place in his race. But a big disappointment there for Marco Schade. Had some fantastic driving through the field, some great opportunistic overtaking, but unfortunately, just like in the real world, sometimes the likes of mechanical failures, they can take place, and unfortunately it can be just the same in the world of sim racing as well. As Osterman's got a mighty exit out of the chicane, but again, he's not looking for an opportunity as of yet on his teammate, wide for Niox on the entry towards the hairpin. Castorino hunting around, and Korekis now just taking another 3/10 over the course of the last lap on this leading pack. His tyres aren't going to be in the best shape. Meanwhile, Oystein Brenham trying to go around the outside now of Pagano, of course, who's been a little bit on the back foot the last couple of laps, but the BMW unable to make his way through. And the battles continue to range on all the way, top to bottom in this field. Some of the very best on the ACC platform and the LFM platform going toe-to-toe and giving us great action all the way to the end. Now it's carrying good momentum, but he may compromise his line there just a little bit. Castorino, of course, remember, he's got those fresher tyres, and whilst it may not give him the greatest of advantages, it could be just enough to make his way up a position, but for the time being, Knox in the number 8 car, still holding on, and Jacob Osterman opening up the gap between himself and his teammate. That's not ideal, and it's not ideal for the likes of Knox and Castorino either, but it does allow Lewis Rotors to maybe just be a little bit more aggressive. He's got that extra bit of breathing space. It won't likely be for long, because I think Whitehead is running a little bit slower relative to the clean air pace of those other cars behind, so Lewis Rotors may only have this opportunity, this advantage for a couple of corners, and again, Luke Whitehead just straight lining the wheel, but heading towards the apex, in towards the Melbourne hairpin, and stopping Rotors from being able to find an opportunity. He's got to be careful not to do that too aggressively, though. A lot of the stewards may have something to say. Meanwhile, Jardier, George Boothby, Lobmeyer, and Renault Coots have all been closing down onto the Sprout Esport Lamborghini of Noah Reader, currently sitting in P11. And they are each trying to see if they can find a way through. No more penalties by the looks of it have been dished out. And I think there may have been a penalty dished out for the number 34 car. And in actual fact, hang on, because I think it's the 21 and 34. We've had a few penalties actually come through. I shall try to keep up to date with those. So we had a drive-through penalty for the number 21 for an unsafe rejoin. A 15-second time penalty for the number 7 car. And let's see, that's Jacob Osterman, so there you go. That's the penalty for that contact down at the hairpin then. So big penalisation for Osterman, so that takes him out of race-winning contention, I do believe. And then after that, there is a potential 5-second penalty for number 34. I can't see, though, if that has been officially applied or not, but definitely was taken to the steward room to be held under review. Meanwhile, 20 minutes left to go in this race, the final third of this one to go. And each of these drivers, you can see that's a very poor line from Noah Reader. It's a great bit of momentum from Jardier towards that inside line. He's managed to force the opportunity, to force a move. Can he get it done on the brakes? We'll go on board with George Boothby. He's got a great view of his teammates and Noah Reader side by side on the exit. The McLaren driver just about making his way through, goes defensive towards the next left-hander, and George Boothby now trying to go extremely late on the brakes around the outside for one of the winningest drivers on ACC. A little bit of contact on the exit, but I think the McLaren driver may have just about done enough, and Jardier very kindly giving the slipstream to his teammate, trying to eke out that advantage, and George Boothby is through up into P12 now. And whilst he may be thanking his teammate there, I'm sure in just a moment he'll be trying to take the position away, because at the end of the day these drivers are competing for some fantastic points, some fantastic prizes, and a lot of pride on the line as well in this brilliant championship. Meanwhile, your race leaders, the gap's closing up once more, of course, with Osterman's penalty in play. Nils Narks and Castorino, and even Grantas Correcus as well, will all benefit and move up a place. So not what the man who has been very consistent so far this season would have wanted, and it is over to his teammate to try to see if he can stop Luke Whitehead from taking another victory, a third race win, and the second one on the bounce, if he can make it stick on home soil. Again, that slightly defensive entry from Luke Whitehead's a bit squirrely on the exit. Castorino very close to the back of Nils Narks, but I don't think there's going to be an opportunity given to him heading in towards the final turn. It's tricky to make a move. I tell you what, George Boothby, that was very wide from Jardier. He may have even conceded the position full stop. I'm not sure if that was on purpose or if he made a mistake, but one way or another, George Boothby moves once more back up a position, and George Boothby actually goes a little bit wide, so trading mistakes apiece now, and he's got his teammate to worry about heading down towards turn one, a little bit defensive on the entry, but I think in the end he can take the line as normal. And he will indeed. So George Boothby moves himself up to P11. He's got 7 seconds to try to close down. Fantastic exit from Paul Lombard. It's side by side through turn 2. It's very close between himself and Noah Reed. Oh my goodness, through the crane of curves they go. The number 14 car trying to get himself up an extra position, but Noah Reed is having none of it. Almost being pushed along on the exit of the old hairpin there. And here comes Renault Coots, the Estonian. Now look in the rear view mirror towards that inside line. He'll turn towards the outside line. Lotmeyer defensive, Lotmeyer aggressive, trying to see if there's any opportunities that he can make, but in the end they will maintain the positions that they had in that opening sequence, and Noah Reader dropping away from the McLaren pair, and they will look to try to make their gaps just a bit stronger. And for the first time, Luke Whitehead has to go seriously defensive, and Nils Narks on the inside as well. It all happens at once. Luke Whitehead holds position. Osterman cannot though, and now he's got Castorino trying to go towards the inside, now towards the outside. Narks is through in towards P3. Castorino on the fresh tyres trying to go around the outside of the McLaren, but he can't do it. And Osterman is robust with the defence, and Lewis Rotors for the first time. That was a real opportunity from the number 23 car to go for his first race victory in the Pro Series and his first one of the season. And whilst his teammate with that penalty as well, taking himself potentially out of the championship fight at this stage, as Oystein Brenham trying to set one up the inside of Aidan Walsingham. BMW versus Lamborghini. Florian Duakop is battling amongst all of this as well. Pagano stretching his legs in the 296 ahead. Walsingham now down the inside in towards the next turn. And that's always big send from Polikov. Contact with the number 20 car. Florian Duakop losing out there. And I imagine we'll see some flashing lights potentially on the exit as Brenham once again under pressure. Now from the Porsche, Polikov, who's made contact once more. Florian Duakop, no love lost between them. The pair of them have gone round. Florian Duakop off on the track. Jimmy Holmes off on the track. Brenham around, and they all fly on down. The crane of curves, losing momentum is Polikov, but he's still side by side with Florian Duakop. The inside turns in towards the outside, back towards the inside line. Does he send one in towards turn 4? He does. Porsche versus BMW contact again with Florian Duakop. Big sideways moment. Jimmy Holmes now coming through and around the outside in the 296. He was sent wide on the exit of turn 1, and he'll say thank you very much for the free position and move his way up into 25th, a place wide from Polikov, and could be under pressure in just a moment as Castorino has made the move on Jacob Osterman, and Osterman now continuing to lose out. Will try to catch up with everything that's going on. My goodness, it has been carnage and chaos, and I can tell you that it's still continuing to kick on. Lobmeyer versus Coots will catch up with that fight in just a moment, but here's Castorino. Whitehead was on the defence again, but Castorino on those fresh tyres, he sends one up the inside. inside, and Osterman with that penalty as well, just dropping positions. Even Luke Addison may be able to benefit from that 5-second penalty at this stage of the race. But Castorino, opportunistic stuff. The Italian driver trying to see how far up the order he can get himself, as Lewis Roters again glued to the rear diffuser of the Porsche of Luke Whitehead, who's led since the beginning of this race. Niels Knox with a great run out of Coppice corner, now heading up, out of McLean's, now towards Coppice, diving down the inside of the Aston Martin, and Luke Whitehead breathes a sigh of relief. He says, thank you lads, battle away, I'll just disappear off into the distance. Lewis Roters barely keeping all four wheels on the grey stuff, and now Castorino trying to look up the inside, so is Niels Knox. Lewis Roters goes from the attack to the defence, but I think he's managed to eke out enough of an advantage, but it's a mighty exit from the German. Looks one way, looks the other, sent towards the outside. Whitehead breaking free now as Lewis Roters defends from his compatriot. Castorino looking up the inside once more. He made it work a second ago, and now fighting one of the wisest in sim racing. The Italian on the fresh tyres, trying to see is there anything that he can do. We'll go on board the rear diffuser of the McLaren. The two Astons side by side on the exit of the final corner, and Niels Knox holds on to P3. Roters escapes for just a moment. Castorino, though, still on the attack and needs drivers. They're scrapping away. I thought there was going to be contact there in towards turn one, but they managed to keep it all together. Meanwhile, Lobmeyer versus Noah Reid of Lamborghini versus the Porsche, and it's the Porsche that comes out on top on the exit. We'll see if there's anything that happens in towards the stewards' room as well. But my goodness, Luke Whitehead for the first time, he's got a decent advantage over some of these cars. But Lewis Roters, we know how quick he's been. We know that the Porsche seems to have been in just a little bit of a struggling state as we get further into the race, and it may still be on in terms of the battle for the race win. But that was Lewis Roters going in, trying to find an opportunity, but then ending up on the back foot and having to fight very firmly against the likes of Knox and Castorino. That's also brought Grant Carreras into the mix as well. P6, now just 2 cents of a second behind Osterman. Of course, he's going to benefit from that 5-second penalty for the ITB racing car, but we'll also be trying to see if he can find an opportunity. I can also tell you that Lewis Roters is flying. He is not done with this yet whatsoever. The gap was 1.2 seconds. It's already 0.7, and Lewis Roters, a man on an absolute mission to try to close that gap. Niels Knox is not too far away as well. Of course, Castorino is Ida versus Lobmeyer. Terrible exit for Lobmeyer out of the S's, and now also with the likes of Renault Coots trying to get on the inside out of the Melbourne hairpin. No, Reader squeezes on the exit. Lobmeyer trying to use the flat 6 to his advantage. When he got on the inside in towards the last turn, defence from the Sprouse Esports car, and the Porsche sent towards the outside line, trying to go for the comeback, and it's all gone wrong. Renault Coots almost sending round the German. The number 14 stays in P14, but will that be looked at in the stewards room, and it will be a matter of just a racing incident. We'll have to wait and see. I can try to have a gander, but I tell you what, these guys putting on so much action, I can barely keep up. Lots from a stewards can as well, as they all try to catch up in the box as well. But after having a 1.2 second lead, it's already down to 0.2 of a second between Roters and Whitehead as they now head in towards Coppice corner. The McLaren's been pretty strong through here on the power, using that high-speed cornering capability of that platform. And the Porsche, it's so good in the final sector, but it does look like Luke Whitehead is struggling at this phase of the race to keep up the advantage over the ITB racing car. Really the sole ITB racing car that can contend for the race victory at this point in time. And Knox, Castorino, Osterman, Carreras just closing in bit by bit. Whitehead's done a phenomenal job to be in that race leading position the entire time, but he has somewhat looked to be a little bit of a cork in the bottle because the race trim pace has not been there. Lewis Roters was half a second quicker on the last lap alone. Niels Knox at exactly the same time, and Castorino and Osterman, they weren't far off either. So they head now on to lap number 33. Just over 10 minutes left to go. And Whitehead, he has been looking in his mirrors the entire race, and he's going to have to continue to do the same because Roters and Knox in hot pursuit, trying to find any opportunity that they can. As Aidan Walsingham further down the order as well, try to go for the over and under on Leonardo Pagano, the next one of the 296s on his radar, trying to see if he can use that V10 power to open up an opportunity. Once again, trying to see if he can take a different line. I don't think it's going to work on this occasion, so we will head back towards your leading group. They have been absolutely nose to tail since the very start of this race. And it looks like it's going to end in potentially the very same way. Look at the gaps inside the top 5. Just 0.3 of a second between each of those cars. A little bit of a space between Castorino and Osterman. But Grant Correca applying the pressure in hot pursuit behind. And this train of cars will go on board the rear diffuser of Luke Whitehead. Because in his mirrors, he has that ITB racing car. Castorino may be up for a move. Looks towards the inside line. It's very late from one side to the other. But he just about manages to avoid contact with Nils Narks. And defence from the German driver. The Italian has the freshest tyres of the bunch in his lead group, and now maybe they're starting to come into effect. He looked up the inside for a moment, couldn't find opportunity. Rotors trying a different line to Luke Whitehead to see if he can open up something in towards turn 1, but I don't think anyone's going to have an opportunity just yet. We'll go on board with Castorino. Does he think about sending up the inside towards P3? But he can't do it just yet. He remained patient at Bathurst, and it paid dividends. Maybe it will be an opportunity once more, because anything could happen in the closing stages of this race. Rotors still applying the pressure onto Luke Whitehead. The Porsche simply cannot escape. He's had that McLaren in his rearview mirrors the entire time. Castorino now has maybe a slightly better opportunity with Nils Narks losing some of that toe effect from those lead pairs. You can just see the McLaren absolutely pushing Luke Whitehead along. In actual fact, we'll go on board the front splitter of this McLaren as they come out of Coppice Corner, heading towards the chicane. Just a handful of laps left to go. There'll be about 6 laps left of this race when they next go towards the line. You can see on the entry the McLaren has that little bit of extra confidence, and I think Luke Whitehead knows he's going to have to go defensive here, and he does. Lewis Rotors towards the outside line, trying to see if there's an opportunity. Nils Narks too far away to get his car on that inside line, but these group of cars once again closing in. It's even bringing the likes of Addison in, of Strozer into this, because they're not too far away either. Magnani, look, the top 10 all within just a small sequence of seconds from one another. Marco Bischoff trying to make his way past the Italian driver, but the Aston Martin holding on strong, much like your race leader of Luke Whitehead. He is parking the bus. He's using every trick in the book. He may be a young lad, but I tell you what, he has a wise head on those shoulders, and he is using every trick that he can come up with to keep those cars behind. Meanwhile, Leonardo Pagano may be running out of luck here, and Aidan Walsingham cut back for the Lamborghini, perfectly judged on the exit. They'll still be side by side though, and Pagano trying to stop the Lamborghini from coming through. They've got to Campo that will be just a little bit behind them as well. I think contact on the entry, deep on the brakes, but parks it on the apex in that 296, and the V10 powered Lamborghini cannot do anything on the exit with the better traction seen from the Ferrari. Back towards your race leaders then. 8 minutes left on the clock, and Nils Narks, Castorino, the Aston Martin starting to come alive once more in the closing stages of this race. And now in towards the chicane they go. Who fares best? Like a lottery every single time. Is a pretty good exit from each and every one of them, but it was Castorino that got the best one of them all towards the outside line of Nils Narks. Now trying to see if he can do anything there. Surely not around the outside. He's got to be wary of Osterman just on the tail end of that group as well. Correcas has dropped back a bit. Anderson and Strozer starting to have a scrap of their own, but Castorino, despite the tyre advantage, it's equal cars between himself and Nils in front, and he just cannot find an opportunity. Lap number 36 begins then in the same way that the few before have proceeded. But my goodness, anything could happen in the closing stages of this race. Luke Whitehead, by just a couple of car lengths, still maintains his advantage ahead of Lewis Rotors, Nils Narks and Castorino in the Aston Martins in hot pursuit behind, waiting to capitalise on any opportunity. Osterman fundamentally removed from this fight despite that P5 position right now. The penalty will send him down the order. Correcas, Addison and Strozer as well joining the party. And what a party it has been, and what a welcome one it will be to the very end. If you are enjoying this action, if you are enjoying all of the goodness that the Case King Pro Series has to offer, then do consider following the channel. Big thank you to all those that have shown support so far on the stream. But I'll tell you what, it's like this every single week. These guys will give you some of the best racing. Look, that is your top 10, all captured in one single shot. There was nothing to choose between the grid in qualifying, and Lewis Rotors has a mighty exit, and this is huge. The McLaren towards the outside line, it's the best run he's had so far. Contact on the entry, it towards the Melbourne hairpin. Castorino and Narks right behind. Tiny bumping on the middle of the corner though, but they all just about get through there safely. And Luke Whitehead, he was firm on the defence there, perhaps a little bit too firm from the Porsche driver. Meanwhile, I think Noah Reed has got around, and he has, on the exit of the chicane. It's all gone wrong for the Sprout Esports Lamborghini, and that promotes Lobmeyer Coots up into P13 and 14 respectively. But your lead drivers all still within half a second of each other. I daren't look away from this fight. I do wish I could have a look on the replay at what took place for Noah Reeder there, but I just don't think I can risk it, because at any moment now, in the last few laps of this race, positions could chop and change. Meanwhile, Walsinger versus De Campo versus Pagano, still once again very deep under brakes for Pagano, opening up an opportunity, but he gets the run on the exit of the corner. De Campo's got the best exit of them all, heading towards the outside line now, defensive from the Italian driver, and he's got his fellow Italian trying to get through as well and parking the bus on the exit of the corner. That is exactly the sort of line that Luke Whitehead has been using at times to try to keep those McLarens, the Aston Martins, all behind, and once again a perfect example of how it can work heading in towards the chicane once more. Like I say, it's sometimes like driving bingo, and these cars closing in on the lead pack. The Porsche has a very, very big oversteer moment from Luke Whitehead, and again he's under pressure from the McLaren, and that's the wrong screen, because here comes Niels Niles trying to send one up the inside of the 720S, the ITV racing car, all over the gearbox. In a Strozer trying to send one up the inside as well, but Magnani firm on the defence. Porsche sent to the outside. Marco Bischoff in this as well. Pagano, I think, has got around full stop. I can't check it on everything, lads. And then towards the outside line for in a Strozer. Marco Bischoff trying to find opportunity. Contact between them. Marco Bischoff goes on through and into P9. Meanwhile, further up the order, Karekis is in the pits. I can only imagine that's for a drive-through penalty. So the Lithuanian, one of the Pro Series champs, removes himself from the fight, from the battle, and now it will only go down with Whitehead, Rotors, Narks, Castorino in the top four, trying to scrap away for position in the closing stages of this race. Just 3 laps left to go. But big mistake there from Grant Karekis, and we don't know what the situation could be with some of these other drivers as well. Meanwhile, De Campo and Walsingham, Pagano seems to have dropped out of this fight as well. Of course, they did see the yellow flag for him, so something happened to the Italian driver. The 296 trying to go all the way around the outside of the final corner. My goodness, towards turn 1, and now heading towards the right-hander. Just a couple of minutes, a couple of opportunities left for these two to scrap away. The 296 has got the downforce, has potentially got the advantage. Maybe Castorino does as well. I have to check on the Delta because he's extremely close, as it looks like he may have one. So unfortunately, we have to go from one fight to another because this one's for the podium. Castorino towards the outside line. Osman waiting and watching for an opportunity. Niels Narks defensive though, and the Aston Martin unable to get through. What took place between Walsingham and De Campo? The Lamborghini came out on top that time around. But your top 5 still as they were. And Niels Narks, a little bit of compromised line there, caught out the Italian for just a moment, but still able to hold on to position. 2 more laps left in this race to go as they cross the line that time around. And Luke Whitehead just has half a second or so over Lewis Rotors. The biggest attack from the McLaren may be starting to fade away as everyone's tyres start to die out. Meanwhile, in a Strozer all over the gearbox of the Lamborghini driver, but he can't do anything down into the Craner curves. And we'll also have a bit of a quick look at the stewarding sheet as well, because there could be some chaos that's taken place on all of that. And there's a couple of penalties for the number 26 car. That's 10 seconds worth time penalties for 26, a 10-second time penalty for the number 20 as well. That's Florian Duakov. Number 26 is Nikolai Polikov. We saw the incidents that took place for him. And looking further down the order, potentially some other penalties in pursuit as well. But for this top 5, they are safe for now, but maybe not safe from the world of track limits. It could strike at any moment in time. And Lewis Rotors, again with a good exit. Same from Niels Narks. And this time, Luke Whitehead doesn't go defensive. Niels trying to go down the inside of the McLaren. He can't get there, though. And Luke Whitehead just about manages to get the power down. Luke Addison has done a fantastic job of reeling in this top 5 group, the 296, holding onto his tyres, and onto the final lap they will go. Luke Whitehead has held this position since the start of the race with his mirrors absolutely full to the brim of Lewis Rotors. The Astons in hot pursuit behind. Castorino maybe a bit too far away for an opportunity at this P1 spot to make it another race win this season, but right now it could go either way. Rotors squirming on the exit of the last lap, potentially Some drive-throughs, of course, for drivers as well as Niels trying to find opportunity in towards the old hairpin. Can't do it there. It's a good exit, though, for Lewis Rotors, and using that high-speed cornering capability. Dudley sending out the inside in towards McLean. See, Luke Whitehead goes defensive, and this could cause chaos on the final lap of the race. Niels Niles can't find opportunity. Neither can Castorino. Luke Whitehead still holding on to position as they head into Coppice for the final time, and towards the chicane they go. He's just got to hold it together for one more lap. Castorino trying to find an alternative line to get some momentum. Can he do anything about the cars that sit in front of him? Can Lewis Rotors do anything about the Porsche he's been staring at for so long? He's aggressive on the entry to the chicane. It's a good run for the McLaren, and Niels Knox is coming along as well to the party. Almost 3 wide into what's ahead, but it's contact, and the McLaren, can he get stopped in time? There's a little bit of a bump at the apex. Castorino all the way around the outside. Luke Whitehead still holds on to P1. It's going to go down to the line. Lewis Rotors too far back now, surely, to try to go for the race win. Castorino sending up the inside. Oh, big contact. Disaster. Castorino's around. The McLaren's around. Who's going to get the podium? Luke Whitehead takes victory here at Donington Park. Luke Addison comes flying through the field to get P3. I think he does. Osterman will drop down the order as well with his penalty, surely. So Luke Addison gets up to a mighty P2. It's chaos on the final lap of the race, but Luke Whitehead manages to just about hold on. Bischoff loses out to Strozer on the final lap. It came down to the final corner. It's going to be down to the final corner as well for Vassner versus Wietschorker. My goodness, what have we just seen? I think this will be the final scrap between drivers, so we'll try to see if we can catch one final replay of everything that took place on that lap. It all kicked off down towards the hairpin. There was a bump here. Luke Whitehead, he managed to remain composed. And then heading in towards the final corner, I think it was Castorino that was the catalyst in all of it, trying to go up the inside of Niels Niles, and heading in towards the hairpin, sends it from downtown, catches Lewis Rotors. Osman backed up in all of his cars, absolutely flying across from one side to the other. And look at Luke Addison, he gets the power down and gets the run towards the line to snag, I think, at least P3. But my goodness, these drivers, I tell you what, the Pro Series, this is what I mean about this championship. It always puts on a show, and it puts on some of the most fantastic racing that you can get on ACC. But Luke Whitehead, he manages, by the skin of his teeth in the end, to hold on to P1. We'll see what the official results are in just a moment. But my goodness, what a finish to round 5 of the championship. And we'll see, do we have our race winner waiting in the chat for us? Hopefully we should be able to catch him. Indeed we do. We'll bring him in for an interview in just a second. But my goodness, Donington Park, take a bow. We were saying about whether or not this circuit would provide the action that we would be dearly hoping for. Would it live up to everything that we saw at the Hungaroring? It has done that and more. And the man that brings it across the line to take another victory in Season 12 is Luke Whitehead, who joins us for yet another interview this season. Luke, I imagine that you're probably trying to calm down the adrenaline and take a deep breath after that one. How are you feeling?
Where to start? First off, good evening, everyone. First off, good evening. Hope you're doing well, everyone. Yeah, sorry, I need a second. That was insane. That was probably the most intense race I've ever had to do. Had the displeasure of doing, I'd say, because that was, yeah, not fun. Not fun at all. Yeah, got quite lucky in the end that the Porsche is decent on quali. Got my lap perfect in quali. Like, I could have maybe gone a 10th quicker, but under the circumstances,
grand scheme of things, my goodness. Just, I mean, we were on the edge of our seats. I think my voice box went up about 4 octaves in that final lap because it was just kicking off left, right and centre. And as you say, you had to lift off the brakes there to avoid contact. And, you know, not just a congratulations to you on putting on one of the mightiest defences that I think we've ever seen in the Case King Pro Series to hold on to that race victory, but your awareness every single lap, but more so on that final one, because I think Lewis Rotors had a little bit of contact from Niels behind, sent him further forward than he wanted to, and then gave you that trouble around your rear diffuser. But
I mean, if I hadn't rolled off the brake, I'd have been backwards.
Exactly.
Simple as that. My race would not have, well, I wouldn't have won. So I got quite lucky, I guess, but also just, you know, I saw in my sort of like radar, I saw my radar that they were having contact, and I was like, yeah, they're gonna hit me, so I had to roll off the brake. So yeah, quite lucky, but yeah, I mean, GG's to everyone in that fight. You know, everyone was relatively respectful. I luckily didn't get killed. Partially down to myself, but it was also just a testament to the guys that were racing around me. You know, despite nearly being backwards on lap 1 and the last lap, everything else was clean. So, you know, no complaints from my side. But yeah, hopefully the car is better in race trim next time, because goddamn, I don't want to put up with that again.
It did certainly look like it was quite the handful at the end. You know, there were a couple of times where you ended up with a bit of breathing space to Lewis behind, and you know, it went up to almost 1.2 seconds, I think, at that point, and then, you know, 1.5 laps goes by, and he's right on your gearbox. Yeah. Once more, that you know, the Porsche today, you know, like I say, good in qualifying when you managed to hook up the lap, but in race trim, you know, what was the weakness of that car? Was it eating too much of the tyres? Was the
Everything.
Balance off?
Everything. No, I mean, in seriousness, it was really good in traction zones, which is just how the Porsche is. But it was just not good on tyres, and also the temperatures didn't help. The Porsche never fares well in hot temps, and obviously this track is quite a high deg track. So when you couple a track that's got high degradation and extremely hot temps, it pays dividends in the wrong ways possible. So it's yeah, it was definitely a hard ask. And I was quite lucky to get that lap in quality. I was probably I was millimeters from getting a track limit invalidation, so I was quite lucky. Proper throwing the car around, and it well, yeah, if I hadn't got poled, I don't think I'd have won. So it really paid dividends. So yeah, I'm yeah, still a bit shattered, to be honest with you.
I can imagine.
But I mean, the setup was as good as I can make it. So you know, I'm happy with that side. It's just hopefully next time the McLaren won't be such a pain in the race trim, because that's 2 races now where it's been very, very, very quick in race trim. So you know, hopefully that won't be the case next race. Fingers crossed. So. Yeah, but yeah, GG's to the top 3 as well. Also, Luke Addison from getting P2. That's insane from him. Really good comeback. So yeah, good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, it was fantastic opportunistic driving from Luke. He came out of the final corner, just found everyone everywhere, and the 296, obviously not the most known for sort of power and torque, but I think maybe the willingness of, I imagine Luke was just screaming in the car to make it go faster. It was a drag race to the line, but did manage to snatch P3, became P2 with Osterman's penalty post-race. But yeah, an exceptional race to the end. I'll let you catch your breath in just a moment, but I do want to ask you one final question before I shall let you head off and rest up, I think, for the rest of the evening after that one. Spa next week. Now, traditionally, McLaren has been pretty quick at that circuit, so in terms of, obviously, it's difficult to tell how BOP and everything is going to affect that heading into the next round, but instinctive thoughts, do you think, you know, your car's going to behave maybe a little bit better there? Do you think the McLarens are going to be strong once more? What's the feelings going into that one?
Quite simply, I haven't a clue. But I mean, the Porsche, obviously, as we've seen, like, with the exception of Paul Ricard, the car really suits the smaller tracks. So obviously Hungaroring, which is, you know, corners everywhere, Donington, corners everywhere. The car was very quick, and obviously Paul Ricard is a really good track for myself, so that was why we were sort of partially why we were up there, and the car was also surprisingly good. Spa, I've never been too great at. I've been getting better recently. No real idea what the pace is going to be like. As you said, I know the McLaren will be very strong. But yeah, I mean, I have no idea. I'm just going to have to go there, you know, do the best I can, hope the car is on pace and performing on all cylinders, and just, you know, go from there. Because I mean, this weekend or this race, I was really nervous last night because I didn't feel good in the car, and changed a couple of things and it clicked. So I just need to hope for that same thing at Spa, but I know everyone else will be gunning for that as well. So, you know, I've got no expectations, just got to keep repeating the job.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, it's quite clearly a job that you've done pretty exceptionally so far this season, winning 3 out of 5 of these races. So fantastic stuff from you. I know a very tiring and exhausting drive. Even though it was only an hour, I imagine it feels like you've just been through a 24-hour race at the end of that.
Yes.
So I shall let you go and have some well-deserved rest, Luke. Big congratulations once again on the incredible victory tonight, and thank you so much once again for joining us for an interview, and we will catch you next week at Spa-Francorchamps.
Yeah, thanks very much, mate. Take care, and I'll hope you speak to you next week.
Take care, Luke. Fantastic stuff to speak to our race winner and 3-time race winner from this championship. Luke Whitehead doing everything that he needs to do in order to potentially make it another title to his ever-growing tally. And Kylo Ever, the informative one in the chat, absolutely spot on. 90 minutes of racing at Spa next week, which may just throw a bit of a spanner in the works for those cars that are a bit more greedy on the tyres, which could potentially be the Porsche once more. So I have to see whether or not Luke is able to make it another victory and make it 3 on the bounce, or will it go the way of the McLarens, or someone else? Will have to wait and see. But recapping from that exceptional race, we'll have a bit of a run through the results, which could still be quite provisional, as I'm not sure if we'll see any changes post-race with all of this. But Luke Addison, let's talk a little bit about this man, because I'm not going to be able to make it through those names in just a moment. Luke Addison approached that final lap of the race after Carreras' penalty, which he'll be seething about now, because that was an opportunity for him to maybe get a podium after all of that. Came into that final lap, those final couple of corners, P6, and fought his way through the chaos and got the magnificent drive on the exit of the last corner. Very heads-up awareness as best as he could in all of the carnage, and charged his way to the line, crucially getting himself ahead of the 2 cars that he was scrapping away with, and getting himself P2, a personal best finish for him. I think maybe his first podium in the Case King Pro Series. So a fantastic drive from him, of course, benefiting from Osterman penalties in the end, but exceptional nonetheless. Whitehead and Addison then take your top 2 spots, with Castorino rounding out the podium. Narks, Magnani takes P5, great stuff from him. Inestrosa to P6, Bischoff P7, Rotas, Boothby, Jardier rounding out the top 10 with Lobmeyer, Osterman, Coots, Carreras, and Ida singing away to the end of the top 15. Mikoski, Tinger van der Velde, Gamble, Vietschalker, Vasta, DeCampo, Holm, Brennan, Polikov, Ferris, Duacop, Walsingham, Pagano, Barrier, and Tempest being your first retirement from the race. Vantin got himself back out on circuit and managed to gain some decent points out of that, and courageous effort from him to see it through to the end. Sharda, with his technical difficulties, retires with Kun, Iamelo, Appel, Karpinen, and Foch, unfortunately, with 2 Bentleys retiring from the race. Absolutely bonkers race from Donington Park, and there was me just sort of wondering whether or not we would have a lot of action. I should have just assumed so. Of course we do. It's the Case King Pro Series. It always delivers the goods. And also want to say a big thank you for all of the support, and a warm welcome to all of those that have joined the stream for the first time. I do apologise once more for the slight difficulties and delay in getting underway at the beginning, but hopefully that incredible finish at the end of that race and the whole race overall was enough of a response to that slight delayed start. And I can see we didn't quite get to about 900 followers, but we'll get there soon enough. But a big thank you to all of those that have followed during the course of this stream. Much like Luke Whitehead, I think, taking a well-deserved nap after that race. I think I'm going to need to rest my voice for quite a while after that one, because the drivers, I love them, but at the same time, my goodness, do they make my job difficult, but I wouldn't have it any other way. This is why we love this championship so much. If you have enjoyed what you have watched this evening and fancy maybe having a bit of a go behind the wheel yourself in the world of LFM, it's not always that chaotic, I tell you that much, and of course, we do strive for the world of clean and fair racing here, but sometimes when there is a lot on the line and it comes down to the wire, we do see those incidents taking place, but an exceptional series of battles nonetheless, and you can get involved in all of that as well if you head to lowfuelmotorsport.com, get yourself signed up, get yourself a license, and you can work your way through the ranks on the platform and compete in championships like the Pro Series. There's the Endurance Series as well, and so much more, and of course the daily racing that you can get stuck in with as well to work your way up through ranks and also get some nice handy dandy prizes as well. And if maybe the world of ATC isn't quite for you and you fancy something a little bit different, then of course there is also R Factor 2 on the LFM platform, where the other worlds of things like the Nordschleife and many other genres of cars are available over there for you to get stuck into as well. And of course, speaking of the Nordschleife, we had recent news that will be coming to ACC at some point in the future, and a future that cannot come soon enough. We will have to be a little bit patient, I do believe, into the early stages of next year, but it's something for us to look forward to, of whatever increasing goodness we can come to love and enjoy on this sim. And if you have just enjoyed all of the stuff that's taken place and fancy sticking around for some more of the championship, like I say, give the channel a follow. It kicks off like this every single week, and would be lovely to have you here to join along this journey. And as a last thing, and a last calling to be a part of this wonderful, wonderful community, if you just want to share all good things, sim racing, real racing, you name it, just want to join a bunch of friendly people that love all good things about cars, you can also head over to the Discord server as well, and you'll be welcomed in with open arms. You can share pictures of your dogs, you can share pictures of your race setups, you can share pictures of your best and worst moments in sim racing, and it's a pretty nice place to be, so it'd be nice to have you a part of that as well. But I think then, for this evening, eventually curtains will close on Donington Park, and we'll be back next week for 90 minutes of action around Spa-Francorchamps, which I think, based on today, considering the nature of that circuit, we're probably in with a good chance of having some incredible action as we approach the halfway point of this championship. So do make sure to join us. Same time, same place for that then. But for now then, everybody, it's good night.